grab a seat, sip some wisdom, and stay a while. This is the Prosperity Lounge, where growth gets personal.
Good evening, everybody. Question for you. What does true leadership look like? Is it all about trophies and titles? Or is it about the impact you leave behind when the lights go out and the game is over? Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Prosperity Lounge, where hope meets freedom and growth gets personal. I'm Joey Ruffalo, and I'm so glad you decided to pull up a chair with me today. Tonight, we're talking about leadership, and not just the kind you see on a scoreboard, but the kind that lasts a lifetime. Leadership that shapes students, communities, and even future generations. My guest tonight knows all about this firsthand. Caitlin Ryan is a former Lady Vol softball player and now serves as the Assistant Director of Student Athlete Development at the University of Tennessee. She is one of the driving forces behind the VOLeaders Academy, a program that equips student athletes to use their platform for positive social change, not just here in East Tennessee or Knoxville, but across the world. So let's pull up a chair and welcome Caitlin. Caitlin, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you very much. I had your mic down. Oh my gosh.
Oh, can you hear me now?
We're good. I'm testing out all my new boards and everything tonight, guys. So here we are. I just want to start off. When fans think about Tennessee athletes and Tennessee athletics, they think about trophies, highlight reels, championships, carrying goalposts down to the river, all those fun things. Missed field goals, I won't go there. But there's so much happening behind the scenes. When people think of UT sports, what do you think they miss about the lives of student athletes off the field? What are they not seeing? What are they just not getting?
So I think that list is very legit. Those are things we think of. We think of student athletes, especially Tennessee right now, been very successful in recent years across all of our sport teams. I think sometimes fans get lost in the other identities of our student athletes and the fact that they are student athletes. We don't always think about the fact that when they're not at practice, they're not competing, we don't see them on TV, that they are normal college students navigating life, and they are also normal students who are in classrooms on campus learning and preparing for what life is going to look like. We know that not all of our student athletes are going to go pro in their sport. We hope a lot of them do. But for the vast majority of them, they are preparing for a life that isn't professional athletics. And so I think a lot of times fans don't always see that piece, and it gets lost sometimes.
Now, I know I told you before we started I had a certain order I wanted to do things, and I'm flipping the script up right now.
Okay, keep me on my toes.
I want to actually start with you and your journey, and tell us a little bit about yourself and your story, and then how you got involved with VOLeaders. So take us back a bit. You're a high school athlete here in Knoxville area.
Yes.
West High School?
Yes. Rebels.
All right.
Long time ago.
Okay. So you're playing high school sports. When you're growing up playing, did you dream of playing collegiate sports? Or were you just that good?
It's been a while.
Okay.
Now, I will say, come from a sport family.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone played sports, even generations beyond my parents. It's always been a really big focus in my household. Growing up, I played a lot of things. It was actually my mom who got me involved. She signed me up for basketball, I think when I was 7. And then from there, branched out into really everything else. And so just kind of grew up in the world of sport and got to high school and was pretty good in a couple of areas, and just had some opportunities to play in college. I can't really say that it was ever like a huge dream of mine. I think I just played for fun, and I just was enjoying it. Always played competitive, but I don't know that it was ever, I have to go to this college, I have to do this. I just always loved sport. And so when the opportunity presented itself, I knew I wanted to take it, and ended up coming to Tennessee, played softball for the Lady Vols, had a wonderful, wonderful experience. didn't know what I wanted to do with my life past softball, and actually had a wonderful academic counselor in the building where I currently work who encouraged me to go to grad school, explore some different options. And when I did that, I also got a graduate assistantship. And so I started working at the Thornton Center, which is where I currently work now. And so I was working through my grad program, finishing my degree, and then I think the stars just aligned and there was an open position when I graduated, and I got it and just kind of stayed there. I've had a couple of different roles. I started on the academic side. I now am in student athlete development. And early on into my career, we started to talk about within our office, talk about leadership in sport. And just at a place like Tennessee, student athletes have this incredible platform. People, no matter what sport you play, you just have the ability to influence people. I saw that when I was a student athlete. I saw that when I was early in my career. I see it even more now. And so we started to think about, what can we do with that? What does leadership look like? What does leadership on your teams look like? How can we help create great leaders in life? We talked about it for probably 2 or 3 years. And then it took us a while to get everything in order. And eventually the VOLeaders Academy was born out of that. And now we're at our 10-year anniversary. It's kind of a dream come true.
10 years, huh?
Yeah.
That's great. I was going to have you take me back through the recruiting process and see what that was about. Because I talked to Patrick Green a few weeks ago from the Ice Vols hockey team. He told me about his recruiting process and coming to Tennessee and playing club sport versus playing, had the opportunity to play a division, the NCAA's Division III. Hockey's weird with their setup and how they do it, but club sport is highly competitive. Take me through your process. Did you have an opportunity to be, as they say, wined and dined during the recruiting process, or you just had multiple opportunities and visits to campus? And what was that like for a student athlete during your time?
Very different. The recruiting process was wildly different. Now it starts really early. Kids are pretty young when they start to get identified. They also start playing competitive leagues a lot sooner than I did. And I think for me, kind of the era that I was in, you didn't really start recruiting until you were a junior, maybe a sophomore. And it was a lot of reaching out to coaches or teams. Softball, you would go and play in maybe some of the big tournaments out in Colorado or California, and coaches would be there to watch. And that's kind of how you met coaches. Now there's so much social media involved. There are high school games that are broadcasted on ESPN. There are people all over the world who know that you're great at the age of 14, and that just didn't exist more so when I was growing up. You really had to put in a lot of effort. And for me, Tennessee was by far like the highest echelon of program that wanted me. And so didn't really entertain anything else. And I always said I would never go to Tennessee because I'm from Knoxville. I spent a good period of my life in Knoxville, and I just wanted to get out and explore the world. But then Tennessee came calling. They were definitely on the up and up program-wise. And sadly enough, my dad offered me a car to stay. I know it's kind of funny what's a priority when you're 18, but at the time we were kind of sharing a car, and I was like, this is amazing. And so it just, the stars kind of aligned, and I ended up staying at home, and I think it was great. I loved being in my hometown. Never felt like I was stifled by that. I liked having my family close. They could come to all the games, and it was cool to see my parents kind of adopt my other teammates. I had a lot of teammates from the West Coast, and they ended up being extremely helpful, I think, in a lot of ways for, people who are 18, 19, 20 years old. They need some parents sometimes. And so we ended up doing a lot for them.
I love that. I also had a parent. My dad offered me a car to stay. I went to California out of New Jersey out of high school, and they offered me a car to stay home, and I still went to California.
You missed out.
I missed out on a car. No, if I didn't go to California, I wouldn't have got married. And then obviously you got to stay in Rocky Top because it is, dare I say, home sweet home to me.
It is.
So there you go.
Reluctantly, when I was young, I didn't want to accept that. Now I'm all about it.
What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced as a student athlete at the time? you were a student athlete?
I think the biggest challenge probably, growing up, I was athletic. I was good in my sports, and we would practice, not nearly as much as we did in college. And so I think when I got to college, it was definitely an adjustment. The time management was a huge adjustment.
For sure.
Because you have to balance. You also have to go to class. You have to do that on your own, and you have to figure out how to manage your time and
that pesky class time.
Yeah, and doing all the studying and the tutoring and all that fun stuff. And so then it, is a lot more practice than I'd ever done, and it was every day of the week. And then you add in strength training, which I never really did a whole lot of. And then we got into season, and you would travel, and we would sometimes be on the road for 10 days straight. And you have to keep up with your classes while you're gone, which is very hard when you're 19 and you're in California and you'd rather just have fun on the road. So there's a lot of life lessons I think you learn through those experiences. So I think the time, balancing time, was definitely the hardest adjustment.
Okay. So, you could pretend you're taking a marine biology course if you're in California and you're just on the beach and it's part of class, right?
Exactly.
There you go.
100%. That happens all the time.
Oh, man. Was there a mentor or coach or moment in your student athlete career that shaped your own leadership path while you were competing?
I say this all the time, and I say it to her face too, so I hope it doesn't embarrass her. But she's the head softball coach now, but at the time she was co-head coach, Karen Weekly, what is, I always say, is my hero. And I think when I was in college, I didn't necessarily appreciate my coaches as much as I do now. I think there were a lot of rules and restrictions that when you're 19, you're like, why do I have to do this? But now that I'm adult, I really kind of reap the benefit of, and I understand the importance of discipline and just all the lessons there. And honestly, I think she helped me be tough and helped me be gritty, but also helped me understand the privilege it is to be a Lady Vol and what that means. And I think I played during the Pat Summit heydays, and so they were really good friends. And so a lot of the things that were infused into our practices and a lot of lessons I think that my coaches tried to teach us came from Pat Summit's philosophy. And so for me, I just really think about who I am now and the opportunities I've had, and I attribute a lot of that to Karen.
Is there a certain style of leadership or a certain takeaway from that you then in your career now in VOLeaders see yourself going, there's a logical start point to this? And I want to preface this by saying we've talked about 3 different types of leadership styles on the show. We've talked about leading from behind, leading from the side, and also leading from the front. And all of them have their pros and cons. Some are more effective than others, but given the situation, is there a certain style that you gravitate towards?
Do you want me of those 3?
If you have a 4th one, I'd love to know it.
Well, so we actually, in my program, we talk about that. It's 360-degree leadership.
Oh, wow. So I was only 720. Or no.
Well, yeah.
I was half.
I think
Math isn't my strong suit, guys. Just 3/4 of the way there.
It's you don't need that when you're an adult. You don't need math.
Not when I work in finances.
So I would say, honestly, I think I take pieces of each, because I think there are places in my life and in my profession where maybe I am at the top. There are places where I'm on the outside, I'm in the middle, or I'm at the bottom organizationally. And so I think something to think about when it comes to leadership is how do you lead differently when you're in those different roles? And what does that look like? We talk a lot in our program about you don't have to arrive to be a leader. You can be a leader right now. You don't have to wait until you're the oldest or you score the most points or you're the person who the coach has put the C on your jersey and has elected you a captain. And so I think when you think about those 3 places, positions rather, there are ways that you can lead out of all of those positions. And so I think that's something I learned when I played sports. When I was on softball player, I didn't necessarily I couldn't really put it into words. But I think when I reflect on it, that's what I saw, because you kind of progress through all those different spaces when you're a part of a team.
Now, is there there's a phrase that goes around, leaders are born, or leaders are born. In your experience, the natural born leader aspect, people have this in them. It just takes the right person and the right situation to bring it out of them. And it sounds like the VOLeaders program or what you're developing is bringing this out of the people. But also your leadership style, this 360 leadership, is finding the right style for the right person in the right moment. And hey, how you lead me is different than how you lead the next person, but you have the capability to find what's working for them and usher them through.
You got it.
I love it.
Yeah, that's it. We're done.
Okay.
No,
Solves
I think
the math problem.
No, you're spot on. I think that's a kind of on day one in the program, we tell students essentially that, in that everyone has a different skill set. We have different lived experiences. They're there for a reason. Their coaches see something in them and want to help bring that out or develop it or whatever that looks like for them individually. And so our goal is to help student athletes figure out what type of leadership is authentic to them. We never want someone to feel like they have to show up and be a certain way that is uncomfortable, causes a lot of stress. Now, sometimes you have to be uncomfortable. You have to push yourself outside your comfort zone, but it should eventually kind of be natural. And I think leaders oftentimes in some ways forget that they also have to be good followers. There are situations where you need to lead, sometimes you need to follow. Everyone responds to you differently. And so I think that's like a big part of our program is helping our students figure out what's authentic to them and how do we bring that out of you.
I love that. Let's shift back to where I was at in the beginning here, talking a little bit about the student athlete experience and the leadership and what goes behind the scenes. Can you share an example of how a student athlete has balanced both excellence in academics and athletics?
Oh gosh.
You can use your own story if you want.
No. Not excellent.
I was setting you up there.
I can only talk about myself so much. Yeah, I think it's hard.
Okay.
I think that especially now our student athletes are pulled in so many different directions. Very exciting, lots of opportunities. But I think that we also, as the public, don't always get to see all the other pieces. We see all the athletic accolades, and then you don't, it might be a footnote that's like, oh, and this person was a torchbearer, or they graduated, with a 4.0 GPA and they're going to med school, or, you just don't always see that. I get to see it. So I think it's really, really exciting. Someone who comes to mind to me very recently was men's basketball player Jemai Mashak, which I think he's a fan favorite. As well, now he's in the NBA, but I think he was someone who was very grounded. He came through our program, but also just was really committed to every aspect of his experience at Tennessee, not only on the court and obviously all the excellence that they have achieved with men's basketball, but also in the classroom, in the community, within our program. I think he's someone who didn't necessarily let all the noise get to him, and he still just kind of showed up every day and was like a normal guy and was nice to everyone. And I think you could see that too, and just reflected in the way that he played. People love him. And so I think he was a really good example of someone who figured out that balance.
So I was reading a little bit about something called Tennessee Tailored.
Yes.
Such an interesting name. I love that.
I'll tell my boss.
All right. Approval. What does that approach look like in practice? Tell me a little bit about what that means and what that approach looks like.
Yeah, Tennessee Tailored. So that's what we call the kind of the program and the division that I work out of. We're in the Thornton Center, which is the building. It's next to the track on campus. If you ever are down there and want to know where it is, But our program is Tennessee tailored. And so we have a couple of different divisions that make that up. We've got the academic side, student athlete development, which is what I do, and then student services. And so within that, there's a lot of different programming and workshops and opportunities for our student athletes to take part in. And it's kind of the same way as when I talk about leadership, everyone comes into college at a different place in their career, academic career, or personal life. They need different things. Not everyone comes in and needs a level of support that, maybe another individual does. And so with our program, the tailored part with it's literally our logo has a needle on it. So it's supposed to be like tailored, like a suit. And that part is the idea that we offer a whole bunch of opportunities for our student athletes, and then they get to kind of pick and choose what they need, what makes sense. Now I'm in their ear a lot being like, I think you should come to this career event because, it'd be great for you. Or we do a lot of financial education. And so for our student athletes who are maybe partaking in NIL deals and they're starting to have more money than they've ever had, I might be like, hey, you really should, come to these financial workshops, do a one-on-one session, kind of make sure that you know what you're doing in that space. Especially like our upperclassmen, those are the ones I focus on a lot because again, your sport may not be your forever plan. And so it's nice to have, we call it kind of like a parallel plan. So even if you were thinking that you're going to go on and play pro for however many years, let's just be preparing for something else just in case you need it. Because if you are a pro athlete, at some point you will retire, and oftentimes you retire and you're maybe still in your 20s. There's a lot of life left. Like, what are you going to do with that? And so that's why we exist, is to help them start think about life beyond sport.
That's true. I think I was reading, if I remember correctly, like the average NFL career is like 3 years or something like that.
Imagine being 25 and being done.
I know. And you didn't even make the big paychecks yet. You're playing on a small deal and you're done, and you have to live the rest of your life with trying to find an income to replace that. And I can imagine. Many of the students that are coming through nowadays, not just for sport, but in college itself, are first generation students. What are some of the challenges you see them facing, and then how do you guys support them through that transition?
Yes, I would say, so not only do we see first gen students, it's on campus as well. So, we have our own offerings. Campus does too. They have a whole first gen program. We try not to be a complete silo with student athletes. We try to integrate a little bit into greater campus. But I think oftentimes with our first generation college students, it's a little bit harder for them because they don't have someone at home necessarily to like ask questions to or help guide them through the process. And so I think we just try to be as available and warm as possible. I try from day one to let everyone know there's no such thing as stupid questions. If you have that question, someone else definitely has that question, because it's a big transition, living away from home, moving into a dorm. Your sport is taking up so much of your time. Oh, and you're in college classes, and you just don't have any time to do anything. And so we're pretty intentional with our programming. We do a lot of one-on-one stuff, especially when our freshmen first start. They have different requirements in terms of like hours they have to be in our facility and doing study hall, people they have to meet with.
I like that.
Yeah, and even students who maybe come in with really high GPAs out of high school, everyone kind of starts in the same place because the philosophy is, let's start with a lot of support, and as you prove that you don't need it, or you feel good about everything, like we can peel those things away. But it's easier to take things away than it is to put a Band-Aid on a situation. If you get halfway through a semester and you're really struggling in a course, it's a lot easier to just start out with those support pieces rather than try to catch up when you already feel behind.
So you guys have a philosophy of over-delivering.
Yes.
And providing as much support as needed. And
yes.
Then if you don't need it, it's there. But it's there if you need it. And you can always go back to it.
100%, yeah.
Okay, I don't need this right now, but I may need it later, and it's there available.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
And I think it's also another piece of that is getting students to come into our building to meet people, and so they know, so that they meet me, they meet the rest of our staff, they They have a tutor, they have to come in for study hall. And so if you can just get them in the first few weeks, they start to understand like, oh, that's a cool place. They're nice people. They're here to help me. And so it just makes it easier when you do reach out and have a request, or you're like, hey, I think you should like come to this thing, or let's do this service opportunity. They know who you are. And so even if they don't necessarily need the as much structure, it's just nice that they like learn about all the things that we offer because they have to be there.
I'm going to put you on the spot here at this one.
Okay.
If you could describe the Thornton Center's mission in one sentence for someone who's never heard of it,
Oh my God.
what would you say?
So we have a mission statement. I hope no one is listening to this who works there who's going to be like, you can't recite it.
Nobody's listening.
I don't know.
Okay.
I told some people about this.
Pressure's on.
So I will say my family asks me all the time, they're like, what do you do? Like, it's really hard to explain. I would say our mission in like maybe one or two statements is to support our students holistically as people, as future professionals, as leaders, as students, and help them prepare for what life is like after sport. We don't do anything in the athletic realm. And so we always tell people, we're not your trainers. I'm not going to make you run. I'm not doing your sport. We're not teaching you any of those skills. We're teaching you life skills. We're teaching you, helping you prepare for a future career, whatever that looks like. And so I think that's our mission, really.
So you're essentially their life trainers, though.
Kind of.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, to a point.
Right. I got a question that came in from the chat here I want to get to from Matt, who said, how can college programs help athletes build an identity beyond their sport?
Oh, great question.
And this might be getting into the VOLeaders a little bit.
It actually is. We do a lot of that. So good question. So we address this in a couple of different areas, but it is really heavy in our in the VOLeaders program is kind of like that self-identity piece. And so it's understanding that you have more value and more worth beyond just the points you score, the games you win, the trophies you bring home. I think it's helping our student athletes realize that even though right now, like the most salient identity that they have is probably being an athlete, I usually tell them, we kind of give some of our own background. Like for me, I don't really identify as that anymore, now that I'm out, and just knowing that like identities change. And so it's important for them, I think, to understand when they're this age, what are those other identities that you have? Maybe it's, being a partner, it's being a friend, it's being a sister, it's, whatever that is for you. And then understanding like the worth that comes from that. And that, I think it helps. So if one day like you lose that sport identity, it's not like you don't feel like everything is gone. There's other things that you can, kind of invest in. There are other people who love you. And I think another piece is just helping them understand that their sport isn't everything. We have a lot of conversations around what are your interests, like what are your hobbies, what are the other things that make you unique. When you introduce yourself to folks, is the first thing you lead with like, oh, I'm Caitlin Ryan, I'm a member of the softball team, and then you don't know what else to say, trying to start thinking about like, what are those other parts that make you who you are? Like, what's that like? You have like a pie that like cuts up all those, like, kind of think of it as like a pie. You have all these like little, different slices that make up who you are. That's like kind of the visual that we use when we like put it on the screen, and just help them see that there are other parts of who they are, and those parts are valuable. And sometimes I think it's encouraging them as well to get involved in something if they can that's not their sport. So maybe it's their faith. And so they want to join like an organization or a club or something on campus that kind of feeds that part of who they are. Or if they have a hobby, with the limited time they have, like investing like into that. Like in the off season, I know a lot of them will play like pickleball with each other or go fishing, or, they just do like kind of fun stuff. I think it's good for them to like feel alive sometimes.
I've not tried pickleball. I might be the only
person. You should. That's fun. I play.
I might be the only person who hasn't tried it yet. Yeah. People keep telling me, oh, yeah, try it.
It'll really humble you when you go out there and there's like 70-year-olds who are killing everyone on the court.
I can't. I probably will. I'll be so mad
at
myself.
That's what's great. It's like a sport for everyone. Like no matter your age, like everyone can play. I love it.
I was listening to a guy the other day. He was talking about how he was in a tournament, and he's an older fella, and he was playing against a couple of former D1 tennis players who were in their 30s, and they were in the same division. I'm like,
I bet he beat him.
he was pretty close.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen it played a few times. I've seen it on ESPN, and I'm like, the problem with me, Caitlin, is I would get really, really competitive.
Yeah, it's a
really
problem.
Fast, and it would consume me. So I better not.
So it's the future you,
Well,
your next era.
I got consumed with all this here, doing the live stream and everything else. I bought all this equipment. I can imagine how much stuff I had to buy for pickleball.
Have all the best rackets.
Yeah,
You could do this.
Man, we're getting off the rails again. This happens usually about this point in the show. All right, I'm going to talk about VOLeaders, which is why you're here. Essentially, well, you're here for other stuff, having a great conversation. But I want to talk about VOLeaders. Now, VOLeaders has been around since 2015,
Yes.
and you were instrumental in getting this started.
Yes.
I'm throwing you all the credit. That's why.
It was a team of people, but yes, I was on that team.
Okay. How did this conversation get started? I think you told me just a little bit about that, but take me through the end stages of this conversation. You're getting ready to get started. You had this idea to come up with VOLeaders with the team of people around you, implementing it, getting approval from, I assume, the university that I'm going to launch this program. It's a lot of red tape to go through and paperwork and dot the I's, cross the T's, signatures, funding, all that kind of stuff. All that stuff's now done. You're getting ready to get started. How do you sell this to student athletes?
Great question. Well, so all those things you talked about took a couple of years, particularly the piece with the university. You have to convince them that it's okay for athletic department staff to teach a class of only student athletes, which, now we have lots of credit. So it's, we're good because our program is curriculum based. And so it is a class. And so students go and they get credit. And so that was probably the hardest part, was getting that solidified. They also get credit towards a leadership minor. So it's not just like a random class. It counts towards like an actual program. If they do our whole program, when they leave our program, they'll have a leadership minor. And so it's taken a long time to get all of that. So we're in year 10. We just got that like completely seamlessly transitioned. It's been kind of building for a while. So when it first started, it was definitely like a dream of ours. And when it launched, we had to not necessarily convince students, we had to convince coaches, because coaches are the ones who nominate for the academy. Students don't like sign up or put in an application. You're nominated by your coach. And so the first hurdle was going to head coaches and being like, we're going to do this thing. It's really cool. And we think you should put your students into it. So I think some of the ways to kind of alleviate their questions and some of their stress, because their initial question is always like, how much time is this going to take up in their lives?
Right.
Which is why we work so hard to make it a class, because class is protected time, because they're in class. They have to be enrolled in a certain amount of hours. So why not just make this one of those classes? So we're not asking them to come back at night. We're not asking them to do anything extra. It's also a way to, I think, build some integrity with the program, because, again, you have to come every day to class. There's readings. There are assignments. If it's an extra thing that you get to opt into, at some point, life gets really hectic and crazy. And so something has to give. It's probably going to be that like extra thing that you go to on Tuesday nights. And so it was the classroom piece that I think builds the integrity of the program. But then also with coaches, it kind of, gets rid of that question of like, well, when are they going to do this? It's like, well, it's going to be a class they take. They sign up for those 15 hours a semester. One of those classes is going to be VOLeaders. And so I think that was the first like big hurdle. The second is then convincing them that we can take them out of the country for 12 days in the middle of the summer. For some of them right before like fall camp starts or their season starts. And so we have to be really intentional with where we go, where we stay, the food that we're feeding them, making sure that there is access to work out, to do what they need to do to kind of like be in good status, like with their sport. So when they get back, so it's really the coaches that was the hurdle. But once you have a couple of years through it and coaches start to see the output and start to see, you know, the growth in their athletes, you know, we don't have to sell it anymore. You know, they love it. And then the more like as time has gone on, athletes start to ask about it, you know, when they're freshmen and when they're underclassmen, they're like, oh, I see, you know, a couple of my teammates are doing this. Like, I want to be a part of it. You're no longer having to explain to someone like, okay, this is what VOLeaders is, and we think you'd be a good fit. Like, everyone kind of knows about it now because it's a pretty big honor to be chosen.
So what's the impact been like for the coaches? Have you gone back to them after so many years of being in the program and saying, I'm sure I'm sure they have, but what's the impact been like having now these leaders go through the program, get the training, do some of these trips that you've talked about, come back now into spring camp for football and kind of spread what they've learned to the other athletes? How have the coaches responded to seeing that like permeate through the culture of the different teams that these students have now had this access to? I assume it's been probably great. I'm just throwing it out there.
It has. Well, I credit our, you know, our alums who've come through the program with this, because one of the things we tell them constantly is, you know, this program doesn't work unless you are sharing what you've learned. You know, it's great that you sit in this classroom with us and that it's so impactful and it's amazing, but if you're not implementing what you learn, it really, like, it's not going anywhere. And so not only do you need to, you know, be practicing and using, you know, takeaways from class, we have some assignments that we built in where they are required to talk to their head coach. And so they're required to have a conversation around what they're learning, what their coach is observing in them. They ask for feedback, you know, and so I think like we make them have those initial conversations, and so it comes more naturally like as they progress, which I think has been really, really helpful. Because again, I can talk until I'm blue in the face about how amazing the program is, but unless you have the students who actually are showing that or having those conversations, no one's going to believe it. And so I really credit a lot of the buy-in to those students, because we push them to do that, because again, if you aren't practicing the things you're learning, what's the point of all of it? And I will say, actually, we're working on a 10-year like anniversary video right now, and I watched the draft today, and Allison Ojeda, who is our women's tennis coach, is in the video. And one of the things that she said, it like stuck out with me because I thought it was so great, was that she said that all of her you know, players, all the women who've come through the program, the thing that she notices the most is that they come out better humans. And it's something that like really stuck with me, and I was like, it makes me feel really proud.
Wow.
But so I think that's, you see kind of those little differences in people, because again, you don't have to be the loudest person in the room. You don't have to be like the person who's like leading the rah 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 cheer in the middle to have an impact. But I think sometimes what coaches notice are the VOLeaders who are picking up their teammates when they have a bad day or a bad game. They're the ones who are having those conversations. They're having tough conversations. They're coming to them with concerns or questions like that. I think they can just see that builds confidence in them.
And being a part of this program is a privilege.
Definitely.
Right. So if you're not going to class, you're not doing the courses, you're not passing, you're out.
We've never had to kick anyone out.
Well, that's good.
Which is great, because I think that they understand from day one how much of a privilege it is.
Yeah.
They also know, like, I have direct access to so if they miss class, like whoever's in charge of them immediately knows. And so I think there's a little bit of, I don't want to say fear, but they just know I have direct access to be like, so-and-so wasn't in class today. You know, but I think they understand that it's a privilege, and they, you know, they're excited for everything to come. And even if they get in the program and they're like, I don't know what this is, what are we doing? But at least they know there's an international trip at the end. And if that's the thing that keeps them there, like, so be it, because you're going to learn something along the way. And it ends up, I think a lot of them, like, they love the trip, obviously, but when you ask them what their favorite part of the program is, they don't normally say the trip.
Interesting. So besides you dropping the hammer on them, putting the fear
Yeah,
of
I
God
seem
in
like a
them.
really mean person, right? There's a lot of.
You mentioned this trip.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about classroom work versus in developing the leaders, and then actually the real world experience of the retreats and trips that you guys have. Have you seen when those happen? Not necessarily when you see when it happened, but have you seen that experience sort of kickstart somebody or elevate them to another level being in that real world situation? Because you can only do so much in the classroom experience in any course that you take or anything that you're learning, but the real world practicum is where you can see people really start to grow. And I'm sure in your situation with the VOLeaders program that's happened. People see things in maybe in the program or relating back to where they might have come from, but then going to these overseas trips and really putting themselves in situations that maybe none of them have ever been in before. The growth that comes out of that is probably exponential.
Oh,
and empowering.
100%. You know, you can learn a lot in a classroom, obviously, but you take it to another level when you then experience it in person. And so I think that's normally where I feel like I see people like growing before my eyes, because through the year I can tell, I can see people gaining confidence, finding their voice. And it's always interesting who relates most to like certain topics, like who kind of like hones in on things. And, you know, they get really close with one another. And we do a lot of prep for the trip. So we actually do a lot of like practical, experience. Like when we go in country, we do facilitation. And so we work with a lot of like elementary schools or organizations with like little kids. And so we teach them how to teach games and sport to kids who maybe like don't speak the same language as you, or kids who have like a cognitive or physical disability. Like how do you make things inclusive for that group? And so we practice it, but then when you see them actually do it, you know, day one, they're good. Day two, they're better. Day three, they're amazing. You know, like you can actually see it growing. And I think you see like, it's like things click. So we talk about stuff in the classroom and they're like, okay, I understand this. And then they go on the trip and they're like, oh, like I really understand this. And so I think that's like, there are some people who don't make it on the trip because of like national team opportunities or summer ball or, you know, injuries, whatever it is. And I would never want to say like their experience isn't as good as everyone else's because they didn't get to experience the trip. I just think it's different. But I think there is a little bit of a difference from when you learn something in a classroom and then you actually implement it and you see it play out.
That we say that math is a universal language, but it seems like sport is as well.
Yes.
Because as soon as you go over there and kick a soccer ball around, everybody knows what to do.
They do.
Yeah.
Soccer is everywhere. That's kind of our example that we use, is that no matter where you go in the world, you can throw that out there and people know what to do with it. It's really cool. It's the unifying power of sport, really. And we talk a lot about that. I teach a lot in the spring, and we talk a lot about the power that sport has to cross like any kind of identity or barrier that you think exists. Just put people together and make them play. And like you'll just see like, you know, bridges come down, connections are made. It's really cool.
Now, do you get to go on these trips too?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So it's like, oh, I missed out on this as a student athlete, but now you get to go and live vicariously.
Oh yeah. I've been all over the world with this program.
Can you share a story from one of those trips that really shifted your perspective from a student athlete's perspective, that maybe you looked at it and go, yes, this is why we're doing this? I'm sure that first trip was probably really, let's see how this goes.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, it worked well, but there's probably something that you see and go, this is why we were doing this.
So many. I got to figure out which one I want to pick. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about Dylan Sampson. Okay. People know who he is, so we'll throw that out there. Wonderful human. Obviously, football player. For anyone who doesn't know, recent grad from Tennessee, football player, owns a lot of records. I think he's with the Browns, Bengals, one of those in Ohio right now, in his first season. But during his year of VOLeaders, he just has a big personality. He is someone who like walks into a room and like there is no stranger. He'll talk to everyone. He's not too big or too cool for anyone. And so I think he always did such a great job in our classroom, making everyone feel like valued and welcome and like they mattered. And he's also just like silly and goofy, so he's really fun. But when we went on his trip, we went to South Africa and Botswana. And when we were in South Africa, we had a day where we met a little boy named Simpiwe. And Simpiwe is, he's an amputee. He has lost the bottom half of both of his legs, parts of his arms. He was very sick as an infant, and so he had to have some surgeries. And so, but he's an athlete. He's a runner. He has blades, so he runs on blades. And so we met him at one of our organizations, and he's very, very fast. He like owns a lot of national records. He's going to be a Paralympian. Like he's big time.
Wow.
And so we met him, and him and Dylan just like clicked. They were buds, super buds all day. They filmed a funny, like cute little video together, and then they actually were on a South African television show. They for some reason, I don't know how this happened, but they got on like a late night like sport talk show. So they formed this. I know it's random. I'm not doing that justice, but they formed just a really like beautiful friendship, and they still talk. And when we were back in we came back from our trip that fall. Dylan and him, like I think it was on the same day, Dylan set the touchdown record for Tennessee, and Simpiwe set the national record like in one of his races. And we actually have a video of them like on a call together, like talking about their races and keeping up. And so I just think about like experiences like that. I love all of our athletes who come through the program, but I think about some of our athletes who are really high profile, and you could choose to be like too cool for school and, just kind of do what you need to do to get through, to get to the league and make all your money and not really invest and engage. And he's someone who just was like the opposite of that. Really always just made everyone feel welcome and like they mattered. And I just think about that in particular in South Africa and that connection. And it's really easy to make connections in country and then be like, oh, that was cool. And then leave and like never like have a conversation again, but like they're still friends, which is so cool.
Out of mind and stuff at that point. But you just, that's amazing. Yeah. That's a great story. Some alumni have actually gone on to start nonprofits from this, do community projects out of this. What's it like to see their leadership ripple beyond UT?
Oh, it's so cool. It like gives me chills to think about it. We have a number of student athletes who honestly they see what they experience things on the trip, and they see people and organizations using sport to impact change in communities, and they're like, oh, I think I want to do that. And they come back and make it happen. We have a couple who have nonprofits. We have one who has a soccer nonprofit. We have golf. Josh Palmer, who plays for the Buffalo Bills, just launched his Palmer Family Foundation. He and I were chatting about that the other day. And he was talking about like with this era in his career, this like I guess it's like, I don't know, it's his second contract. And so he was talking about with this era, he is focusing on like how can he contribute off the field? How can he make an impact in the community? And I think that really like warms my heart when I see our student athletes do things like that, because we don't necessarily want them to change the trajectory of their life in the sense of like, I don't want you to come into our program and think now you have to all go out and work in the community and start a nonprofit and abandon your dreams of, whatever field you were going to go into. It's really just helping you figure out like, how can you lead in your life? How can you lead in that field still, no matter like where you go? But I think it is really neat to see those who do have the ability to like start something like that. And then what does that look like and how do they do that? And so that's a really cool part. We've also had, we've had 3 student athletes who've returned to countries that we visited to work with some of the nonprofits that we have worked with, like while we're in country.
On their own?
Yeah, which is not something I like anticipated happening. We had, I know, we had our most recent one just came back from the Philippines. She visited with us in 2023, and she went back for about a month to work with one of the organizations that we work with which is just, she had a wonderful experience. It was really cool. So those are things I didn't anticipate
awesome.
happening when we first started this, but it's been a really cool byproduct.
That's amazing.
And those
I
are
love
things
that.
I don't think people, when we go back to like our first question of like, what do you think fans don't see about student athlete experience? It's stuff like that, that you just don't necessarily understand behind the scenes, all these like other little factors that are happening.
I'm blown away. You're amazing, especially with the impact you're making, not just while they're in school here, but this impact that's changing not necessarily their lives, but so many other lives, and this changing family trees and changing directions of and trajectories of just people all over from what you're doing. It's just fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, this is why I created the Prosperity Lounge. This is why we're here, to talk to people about leadership and community and highlight experiences and talk about how leadership isn't just a season or a job. It lasts longer than all that stuff. It lasts longer than a paycheck. It lasts longer than everything. It's just there for you. And this conversation is encouraging to you. I want to invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. theprosperitylounge.com youtube.com at the Prosperity Lounge. You can also go to theprosperitylounge.com and sign up for our free community. Use promo code RADIO. You get our free 8-step guide to stop living paycheck to paycheck. It's very important nowadays. You guys get access to all our free courses that are in there, our budget course, our planner, everything you want to get. And make sure you pop in there some questions for our guests that come up. So I got some questions later on that came in. And more importantly, share this episode with someone who believes in the power of leadership, someone you think that needs to hear this. Be it forever grateful. So I want to get back into talking about, and we're looking at the clock, we're getting close to the top of the time here, but today's landscape, new challenges for athletes. We talk about preparing athletes to balance their athletic, academic, leadership responsibilities. But I want to talk a little bit about the financial literacy part, because that's my wheelhouse in preparing them for life after college sports. Talk a little bit about that financial literacy program you had mentioned earlier, and the access that the students have to get in there, and what is it all about?
Yeah, we've definitely I think upped that program in recent years. And it's an interesting challenge because we have a wide range of need, I think, when it comes to financial literacy. And so we have a couple of different partnerships that we utilize and offer like a lot of different, I think, offerings. Again, it's kind of part of that tailored piece of our programming. And so we meet you where you are and help you figure out what is it that you need. We do a lot of team sessions, and so we kind of do some baseline team sessions where we talk a lot about some of those just like really easy pieces like budgeting, savings, credit, like those things that when you're 18 or 19, you're like, what is this? Should I get a credit card? If you don't already have one, because I don't know about you, but I didn't really learn anything like that when I was in high school. No knock on my parents, but so a lot of those just kind of baseline things I think are really helpful. And then, with NIL and RevShare and just kind of where we are, we have some students who are making, quite a bit of money. And so we can have some elevated conversations on what does that look like from an investment standpoint? Where do you put that money? What's smart? We offer one-on-one sessions too. When we bring in folks to, and I will preface, it's not coming from me. And it's not coming from our staff. We use real world professionals to come and do our education pieces. So we have group sessions, team sessions, and then we do one-on-one sessions. And so we hopefully are covering everything that our students need. I think those one-on-one sessions are particularly impactful because that's where you can ask those questions that maybe you were afraid to ask out loud, or if you are potentially in a different situation than other people on your team and you just may not want to say that out loud. I think it creates a little bit of a safe space for those folks. But that is one of our programming pieces that is mandatory. I talked about, a lot of the things that we offer, and it's kind of like a pick and choose what works for you. There are a couple of things that we do that you have to come to. And financial literacy is one of those pieces, at least that baseline. And then from there, you can kind of decide if you want to dig deeper, if you want to have those one-on-one sessions, if you want to continue to use the different apps and things that are available for you. But we believe it's a really important piece, no matter where you are, like in your journey, and if you have money in a savings account or not. It's important to figure out those kind of core pieces now, so that you don't, make questionable choices and flounder later.
Absolutely. It's one of the key things we talk about a lot on the show. I'm a personal financial coach as well, and money fights, money problems are the leading cause of divorce in North America. So being able to have the conversation around money just in general, it's one of those four things. I always say there's four things people hate to talk about. It's money, politics, religion, and sex. The things that people need to talk about, but they don't talk about. And money's kind of really I don't want to say it's the worst because it's what I do, but it's it's
complicated.
It's complicated because you might see your neighbor pull into the driveway in a brand new car, and they go into a house that's empty and they have no money in their bank account, and you're thinking like, man, they're rich. And they're not, because they're not going to come over to you as a neighbor and go, hey man, I'm having some money problems. Can you help me be accountable and look at my budget? Yeah. They're not doing that. So having those initial questions, giving them a safe space to have these questions asked, because like you said, financial literacy isn't taught in schools. Yeah. It's just not. You don't know how to balance a checkbook. You don't know what a savings account is. You don't know what a 401k is, or retirement, or any of those things, like basic things that people should know. They're not being taught. So kids go to college and they're around a lot of money, and they're just, I don't know, they're doing it, so spend it.
Right.
And yeah, like you said, questionable choices sometimes happen.
Trying to put it nicely.
So what role do local businesses and organizations play in this program? Do you have an opportunity for people in the community to get involved as mentors, or to come in and do, like you said, those courses and certain things? Like what's the opportunity for people in the community?
Yeah, absolutely. A huge part of what we do is career and professional development. And that looks a lot of different ways. But we are always in need of places who are willing to host student athlete interns, whether that's for like a full internship or like a mini 2 to 3 week experience, or if we have students who are interested in certain career fields, they just don't quite know the questions to ask, like some job shadowing, mentoring situations. Really, I think the sky's the limit when it comes to that. Again, I think people think student athletes, they're only here to play, they only care about their sport, this and that. The vast majority of them are already thinking about what's next in life and how to prepare for that. A lot of them are in majors and programs that require them to do some kind of internship or practical experience. And so part of our job is always reaching out and trying to find those experiences for our students. And so we are always open to folks who are willing to help us in that way, whether it's like a paid opportunity or not. It's definitely something that's a big need for us.
Nice. Now, I had some questions come in from the chat and questions come in from social media beforehand, and I have a ton here, but I'm only going to be able to get to one.
Okay.
Some of these things we've already answered, but this was from Sarah in Nashville, who wrote and said, you mentioned community engagement. What's the most important project you've seen athletes do here in Tennessee?
Oh, in Tennessee? Mm-hmm. I would say what I really like, what we do is when we have continual service. Mm-hmm. I like when we invest in something and it's not just a one-off situation. Okay. I like when it's continual. We have a partnership with a local elementary school that we've had for, actually, I don't know how many years, but it's been very, very long. And we do a lot of different projects at that school. One of the main things that we do is every week we send student athletes to PE class, and they help facilitate class with the teacher. And I think for that population, it is really impactful. One, because it's a population of it's a lower income school, and then I think it's always nice for those kids to see people in college and to see like, hey, like this could be you, kind of like see themselves in that way. And so that's one of our students' favorites. And I like it because we go every week. We send students every single week. And so I think you can have continual impact because you're showing up on a weekly basis and it's not just a one-time thing. And so it may not seem like a really big hitter, but I think like over time it is.
Love that. And one question that came is, what position did you play?
In softball?
Yes.
Oh, I was infield, so I mainly played like first base. I can kind of play wherever, but I mainly was infield, a little utility. We kind of all played all over the place.
Gotta be versatile, right?
Yeah, but mainly first base.
I love that.
I'm kind of tall.
As we wrap up here, well, that's probably why. Are you left-handed too?
I'm not.
I was going to say, thanks for reach. As we wrap up here are some takeaways from tonight's conversation with Caitlin. Student athletes are more than just athletes. They're scholars, leaders, and community change makers. Leadership is personal. It doesn't look the same for everyone, so small acts matter as much as titles. Your journey shapes your calling. Caitlin's own path from leadership to mentor shows how our past equips us to serve others. Service builds perspective. When athletes give back, they grow as leaders and citizens. Preparation is everything, from financial literacy to career readiness. Athletes are learning tools for life beyond sports. And community partnerships matter. Local businesses, nonprofits, and schools can all play a role in shaping the next generation of leaders. So thank you, Caitlin, for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for your incredible work you're doing through the VOLeaders and the Thornton Center, helping student athletes discover who they are, not just as players, but as leaders, professionals, and people of purpose. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to reach out to the Thornton Center and the VOLeaders program? How do you follow them?
Honestly, I think reach out to our social media. It's the easiest because I check it and I keep it up to date.
Perfect.
And so we have it literally VOLeaders at VOLeaders. You'll find me.
Awesome. And if you're all listening tonight, if you enjoyed the conversation, make sure you connect with Caitlin over there and follow VOLeaders on Instagram. And don't forget, you can always join our community at theprosperitylounge.com. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening and joining in the chat. We had a good chat tonight. Remember, everybody, stay faithful, stay fearless, and remember, freedom lives where faith and action meet. The lounge is always open, and so is your next breakthrough.
Pull up a chair, the journey's begun. This is where momentum